Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, May 28th, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Sean McElwee of Data for Progress on effing gerrymandering and the DNC blacklist. Also on the program today, Supreme Court punts on dealing with Roe v. Wade head on in this term, or I should say the next term. And Missouri is days away, however, from effectively having banned abortion in the entire state. Meanwhile, in Texas, the Secretary of State resigns after attempting to disenfranchise 100,000 voters and making a big boo-boo. Speaking of boo-boo, Joe Biden plans to ride underexposure and low enthusiasm all the way to the White House. The Brexit Party makes big gains in the British contingent to the EU Parliament. Trump White House launches the war on climate change. Hope Hicks faces subpoena. Apparently, she gets to choose whether she's going to comply. Must be nice. And a major opioid trial begins today in Oklahoma. All this and more on today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, hope that you had a good Memorial Day weekend. Apparently, Michael never made it back from his extended break. He is on a retreat, full retreat. And but everyone else is here with us today. Hope you had a good Memorial Day. Fairly quiet weekend as far as these things go in terms of news. Donald Trump, of course, is in Japan, and he is ostensibly negotiating trade deals or just going over. I think he criticized, as soon as he landed, criticized some of the hospitality, but then said good things about Japan buying weapons from us, which is always nice. We've got the best guns.
Make some deals.
Planes, rockets, missiles. They bought those. I mean, we don't have that clip, do we? It just occurs to me, that clip. I heard it over the weekend. He was praising Japan for buying all sorts of military hardware from us, and then talked about how the world has changed and such that he needed. I don't know what threat Japan is facing that they didn't face a year or two ago or 5 years ago, but to champion the idea that the sale of arms is something to praise because of all that's going on in the world. It's a very strange construction.
Deals. It's about deals.
Yeah, deals I can understand, but sort of say we're as if we're living in some type of more belligerent. I can't even say the word.
Belligerent.
Thank you. era is, I don't know, a little bit scary. I found the whole thing a little bit disturbing. But the disturbingness did not end there. Apparently, would this happen over the weekend? Kim Jong-il, rather, criticized Joe Biden and John Bolton. Called John Bolton a warmonger. They must be they must have good intelligence reports that Iran in some ways is trying to isolate John Bolton in the administration. And maybe this was also, this was a way to reach Trump with a little bit of a little bit of medicine, a little bit of sugar. The medicine, John Bolton is a warmonger, and also Joe Biden, not that bright. And here is Trump responding to this.
Does it give you pause at all to be appearing to side with a brutal dictator instead of with a fellow American, the former Vice President Joe Biden?
Well, Kim Jong-un made a statement that Joe Biden is a low IQ individual. He probably is, based on his record. I think I agree with him on that.
But in terms of criticism that you're sort of supporting a dictator instead of an American vice president?
Well, when I look at what's been done by our vice president and the president, when I look at the horrible Iran deal that they made, look what happened since I terminated the Iran deal. Look what has happened to Iran. Iran, when I first came into office, was a terror. They were fighting in many locations all over the Middle East. They were behind every single major attack, whether it was Syria, whether it was Yemen, whether it was individual smaller areas, whether it was taking away oil from people. They were involved with everything. Now they're pulling back because they've got serious economic problems.
Well, I mean, aside from the fact that I may agree with the worst president in the history of our country, arguably, and a brutal dictator on Joe Biden's, on the estimation of Joe Biden, I got to take a little exception with what Iran was doing. Before, certainly they were funding terrorism around the Middle East. When you talk about Yemen, I think arguably we spread as much terror there as Iran, perhaps maybe in some respects even more, because we certainly have enabled the killing of thousands upon thousands of civilians, not to mention just, what has been created there in terms of famine and whatnot, and an inability to deal with the famine and natural disasters there. So I don't know. But it's interesting to see Joe Biden's no appearance, no enthusiasm plan getting under Donald Trump's skin, even abroad. Pretty impressive stuff. Folks, it may feel like cybercrime is something that happens to other people, but stealing data from unsuspecting people on public Wi-Fi is one of the simplest ways for hackers to make money. When you leave your internet connection unencrypted, you might as well be writing your passwords and credit card numbers on a huge billboard for the whole world to see. Protect yourself today with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN secures and anonymizes your internet browsing by encrypting your data, hiding your public IP address. ExpressVPN has the easy-to-use apps that run seamlessly in the background of your computer, your phone. Turning on ExpressVPN protection only takes one click. Super easy. And it costs less than $7 a month. ExpressVPN is rated the #1 VPN service by TechRadar. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Look, you can protect your online activity today. Find out how you can get 3 months free at expressvpn.com/majority. That's Express, EXPRESSVPN.com/majority. For 3 months free with a 1-year package, visit expressvpn.com/majority to learn more. Hey, I've said this before. We have it's rare. Look, I like all the products that we discuss on this show. There's sometimes we get ads. I reject them, but the New Yorker is one of the few ads that we run where I feel like, oh, That reflects well on us. New Yorker represents the best writing in America today, both online and in print. The New Yorker covers a full range of topics, including politics, international affairs, climate change, popular culture, fiction, and food, as well as unique subjects like the world's diminishing supply of sand and heirloom beans. Who knew? The New Yorker also publishes some of the best writers in the world, like Ronan Farrow, who wrote breaking news on Harvey Weinstein and won the New Yorker the Pulitzer in 2018. Helen Rosner, James Beard Award-winning food writer who joined the New Yorker as a roving food correspondent in 2018, covers all things gastronomic. There's all sorts of things. What we just have a writer from the New Yorker on most recently. I don't know. You go through some of the pieces, and we've had Masha Gessen on many times before, and writing about Pelosi's tactics affirm the Trumpian style of politics, which is, I think, a huge problem, frankly. Piece on I.M. Pei, who died, was it this weekend? Famous architect. I'm sure you're familiar with. If you're not, you should check it out.
They got Jane Mayer.
They've, of course, got Jane Mayer. Piece on whether Beto can bounce back. Dubious, but that doesn't give the answer, just gives the question. Now you can get 12 weeks of home delivery on the print edition, as well as unlimited access to NewYorker.com with 10 to 15 exclusive site-only stories every day for just $6. That's half the regular price. You also get the New Yorker tote bag, as well as access to apps, online archive, crossword puzzle, and more. Just go to NewYorker.com/majority, NewYorker.com/majority. Enter the code majority for that awesome, awesome deal. And lastly, if you're looking for something to give to your dad or to give to a new graduate, get them a one-size-fits-all gift, like a new oral health routine with Quip. I mentioned this before. I gave one to my sister. My sister literally unprompted sent me a text like, my dentist said that my teeth look better. From a hygiene standpoint. With guiding features like a built-in 2-minute timer that reminds you when to switch sides, a sensitive sonic vibrations that are gentle on sensitive gums, Quip makes sticking to good habits simple. And if you sign them up for a subscription, they'll get brush heads delivered automatically on a dentist-recommended schedule every 3 months for just $5. It's no surprise that Quip is one of the first electric toothbrushes accepted by the American Dental Association. And with the Quip electric toothbrush, you can show your thanks when it really counts. Folks, I've said this a million times. The thing about dental hygiene, you got to do it every day. You get an electric toothbrush, it's too big, doesn't fit on your sink, falls, it's uncharged, whatnot. Quip gets away, it dispenses with all those problems. It is basically the size of a regular toothbrush. It's far more stylish. And every 3 months, basically they send you a new charge pack.
It'll last longer than that, too.
Yep. New brush heads all the times. That's why I love Quip. With over 1 million happy, healthy mouths do too, rather, I should say. Quip starts at just $25. If you go to getquip.com/majority right now, you can get your first refill pack free. That's your first refill pack free at getquip.com. That's GETQUIP.com/majority. Let's do this Klobuchar thing. This is pretty funny. We don't do a lot of coverage of Amy Klobuchar's candidacy, in part because there's 25 people out there running now, I think, for the office. In part because we don't think that she's going to be a major factor in this race.
The Klobuchar factor.
Yeah, I would say the Klobuchar factor is like basically nil. And I mean, maybe we're wrong. There are a lot of people who are down I'm sure, who have less a share. We don't talk about them either. We'll talk about the Betos and the Kamalas and the.
Maybe people just don't know about her tax advantage savings accounts.
Maybe they don't know about her tax advantage savings accounts because that doesn't fit on a poster very well. But things like, I don't know, Amy for America. I guess it's AA. I don't even know that people I wouldn't even.
It's AM.
Yeah, but this could be the only time that we actually even discuss her on the show in any meaningful way. Also, I don't like her politics, particularly. I mean, they're okay. They're better than a Republicans. But I'm saying in the context of the Democratic primary, she's just not offering anything I find terribly compelling. Tax advantage savings accounts are not terribly relevant for the vast majority of Americans who can't save in the first place. What was that figure? Like half of Americans couldn't get $400 in an emergency?
Yeah, something like that. It's pretty bad.
Pretty bad. And that's from the Fed, ladies and gentlemen. That's a Fed study. Meanwhile, aside from that, this type of stuff is very weird to me as well. Like, there's a couple of things about this statement that I find bizarre. Like, first of all, why do you need John McCain to argue that Donald Trump is bad? In addition to the fact John McCain's dead. But why do you need John McCain to argue that Trump is bad? It seems to me it's a very weird thing to appeal to John McCain as the voice of reason in this context.
It's very senator mindset.
Yes, it really is. But then listen to some of this, which I find sort of hilarious.
The arc that we are on did not just start today. It didn't just start with the 2020 debates. No. The arc that we are on, this arc of justice, started that day after that dark inauguration. That day when I sat on that...
Pause it for 1 second. I'm sorry to stop it so quickly, but when I first heard this, I thought, like, oh, good for her. She realized that the problems didn't start today. This has been a problem that's been growing for decades. And when she talks about the arc of justice, I'm thinking like, wow, maybe she's going back 200 years, 250 years. Maybe she's going back, 40 years. It's going to be interesting when we start. No, the arc of justice apparently is not that archy. It's not that long. It's just about, 24 months, the arc of justice. But all right, so go back a little bit.
It starts after Trump won the election.
Yeah, that's when justice had to start. Maybe that was part of the problem with the 2016 election, is that the arc of justice was not kicking in yet.
Just start today. It didn't just start with the 2020 debates. No. The arc that we are on, this arc of justice, started that day after that dark inauguration. That day when I sat on that stage between Bernie and John McCain. And John McCain kept reciting to me names of dictators during that speech because he knew more than any of us what we were facing as a nation. He understood it. He knew because he knew this man more than any of us did.
Well, how did he know? How did John McCain know Donald Trump so well? That seems weird, but all of that just seems super weird to me.
Maybe it's military body language training.
He picked Sarah Palin to be his running mate. Jesus Christ.
Yes. Maybe that's why he had such great insight into Donald Trump. Well, so of course, Klobuchar is going to get some criticism of this because it's just so silly. But
keep my dad's name out of your mouth. Okay.
Well, here is actually that in fact did happen. This criticism did not just come from people who were sort of like felt it was a little bit of pablum. It was also Meghan McCain, who I feel like is going through some type of low grade breakdown.
Or maybe a higher grade breakdown.
It could be a higher grade, and I'm not rooting on anybody having a breakdown. But Meghan McCain took to Twitter and said, on behalf of the entire McCain family, Amy Klobuchar, please be respectful to all of us and leave my father's legacy and memory out of presidential politics, which is I mean, it's pretty stunning. He ran for president. His dad, I don't remember her ever speaking up like this when the millions of times that people have cited what Trump said about McCain. Not just Trump, but I'm saying everybody who's cited. It just seems like a very weird hill to die on. I don't know what the fight is about there, but apparently maybe Meghan McCain does not like Amy Klobuchar, or I don't know what. Very strange thing for her to come out at that time. And
isn't she supposed to be one of those like moderate Democrats who can reach across the aisle and work with all the moderate Republicans that Meghan McCain likes so much?
Yeah.
You hate to see the center break down like this.
It really is a shame. The center is not holding. The center is not holding. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Sean McElwee. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program the founder and CMO, that is Chief Meme Officer to you, Sean McElwee of Data for Progress. Welcome back to the program, Sean.
Thanks for having me on.
So, Sean, there's two things that I want to discuss with you. First came up because the Supreme Court just, I guess it was Friday, blocked two gerrymandering rulings in Michigan and Ohio. Lower courts had tossed out the congressional districts, congressional maps, I should say, in Michigan and Ohio. Both those situations up until 2018 in Michigan's case, but in Ohio's case still continues to be highly problematic in terms of how many people go out and vote for Democrats and then how many Democrats end up in the congressional delegation. Places like Wisconsin, obviously the worst of stuff like that. And you are part of a new initiative to, I guess it's what the kids are saying today, fuck gerrymandering. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we teamed up with the folks at Pod Save America,
Whoa,
Media.
Whoa. Excuse me?
Whoa. Yeah. They have a massive, enormous platform, really large base. And we wanted to get out this initiative to as many people as possible. And
all right.
So
fair enough.
We're working with them. Ironically enough, I actually wanted to call it the Blue Virginia Project, and they actually came up with the profane name we ended up with. I can't even speak it on the air. I don't like saying swear words. So
I don't know.
Yeah. So the idea behind this is that, yeah, absolutely, the courts have for the most part stalled on gerrymandering. There's still progress being made, but right now, the most effective way that we can fight back against gerrymandering as individuals is by supporting candidates down ballot to help break these gerrymanders. And so the first state that we're taking a look at is Virginia, which has legislative elections in 2019, and actually has had their maps redrawn. The maps were so racist that the courts threw them out. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that in this cycle, progressives are really investing to make sure that we gain the most out of these fair maps and don't let any seats go to waste. So every month, Data for Progress does some math, looks at some mathematical models, and comes up with 10 candidates that we're going to run on a slate. And folks can donate to those 10 candidates on the slate. None of us take anything off of the top. It just goes directly to the candidates.
Now, okay, so these are 10 candidates in the state itself. Like
running for
per state?
The House of Delegates and State Senate.
Okay, but per state. You don't do like 3 in Virginia and then 3 in, I don't know, Pennsylvania.
Well, so Pennsylvania doesn't have elections in 2019. But yeah, as in the 2020 cycle, we're going to probably expand it to do more states, and we'll select candidates across those states. But just sort of because 2019 is the first year we're doing it, and Virginia is the main state in which gerrymandering is playing a significant role, that's our focus.
Okay, and people should also be aware that in 2020 is the year that the census takes its census, and these are the numbers. So really, we have until the 2020 election to turn as many state houses blue as possible to impact the redrawing of these districts, which happens following 2020, essentially, after the new census material comes out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we're using Virginia as sort of a pilot to test sort of how excited people are about this idea. Already we're seeing hundreds of people contributing. So once we break the gerrymanders in Virginia, we are going to turn to the other key states where folks should be investing down ballot. I think one of the most exciting candidates we're supporting is actually a woman named Sheena Bynum Coleman. And she is actually running against Kurt Cox, who is the Speaker of the House of Delegates. He's the guy who drew the racist districts. So I think it would be sort of poetic justice if he ended up losing to a black woman after drawing this incredibly racist map. So she's one of the 10 candidates we're supporting with this slate.
The other ones that you're pushing, is it Joshua Cole?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us about Joshua Cole.
Joshua Cole came up just short in 2017. He was outspent 3-1, but still closed in and lost by a couple hundred votes. That district was sort of underlooked at the time because it was an Obama-Trump district, and the party was at that time really investing in this idea. We got to win back the suburbs, and really focusing on those Romney Clinton districts that flipped. So this is a chance for us to invest early in Cole. He was outspent 3-1 last cycle, and we think that if he is really on parity, he has a chance to flip that seat.
What is the impact of money in races this localized? I mean, one of the things that I noticed in the wake of Trump's election, I think I must have gone to 3 or 4 ad hoc, semi-ad hoc women's groups that had set up for the very purpose of funding state races across the country, like adopting, the Colorado legislator or and funding these places. And I never really saw any data or any follow-up on how much of an impact it had for a state senator to get an extra, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, 50,000, 100,000? I mean, how much money are we talking about makes a difference in these races?
Sure. So a couple things on that. One is the theory of change that we have. I think there are a lot of groups that do this. They spend a lot of time like, give us money, we'll, have this overhead, and then we'll, pick these districts, and, we'll play, we're like the general in the army, with the money. And my view is actually that actually doesn't make a lot of sense. We run an incredibly bare-boned operation. We have people who build the models, but for the most part, once they're built, it's just the matter of running the data. So we don't like to do the thing where we are generals on the battlefield, making PAC expenditures and in-kind donations. Our view is we find the races that we believe are the most likely to be the pivotal seat, the sort of last seat that flips, and we encourage you to give the money there. There's no overhead. It's just an Act Blue form that we continuously update. So we really try to do as bare bones as possible. We did this last cycle with GiveSmart, and there's actually a study that we did where I'm sort of obsessed with the same question that you had. And our targeting was incredibly precise. Right at the pivotal district, nearly all of our money went to races that were decided by fewer than 10 points. Most of the money going to races that were decided by fewer than 5. And multiple races that we supported ended up in recounts, which shows you just how close those races are. And we ran a regression model controlling for a variety of factors. And we found that being on the GiveSmart list did predict a higher probability of winning than what would expect for just controlling for sort of district-specific factors like Clinton's share of the 2016 vote. So we're fairly confident that this money has a big impact. And the last thing I'll say is these races are often, won and lost by a couple hundred votes. In many cases, these candidates are raising, a couple $100,000 would be a big campaign. And so if you're considering, giving money to be the extra $10 on a presidential campaign that's already going to raise $10 million in a quarter, why not be the extra $10 or $15 that decides whether or not a campaign can, pay for a mailer or, pay their canvassers to do another walk. Most of these candidates are not going up on airs with expensive TV ads. You're funding the bare bones operation. So your money's going to go a lot further than, being another dollar in a consultant's wallet.
There's got to be some type of, a figure where you can say like $1 to a state Senate campaign or a state assembly person campaign is the equivalent of like giving $100,000 to a presidential campaign, right? I mean, that's more or less what it's got to be. Your $1, relatively speaking, can have that type of impact. All right, let me ask you this question about the.
You know what? Now that you've asked me, I will sit down the team and we'll work on those numbers. And as soon as we have them, I'll come back on the show and share what we found.
Oh, you mean, Sean? None of the guys at Pod Save America thought to look into that stat? No? Oh, that's weird. All right. Well, because they're so knowledgeable about politics. It seems like a fairly obvious question for them. That's all right. I'm just curious.
Next time we'll,
that's all right.
We'll partner with you.
No, because they're so funny. They're so funny. But anyways.
We'll do a partnership with you.
No. That's fine. That's fine. They've got a much bigger platform. I understand, Sean. Now, so let me ask you this. When you have the 10 candidates, how do you choose? How do you decide that it was going to be 10? Did you say, let's do 10 as a round number, or we're only going to do candidates where we think our money has an X percentage chance of changing the outcome? And also in that question, to what extent did you guys assess their politics? Like you clearly like the Sheila Bynum-Coleman race, and you like Joshua Cole. Do you have people in there that you'd be like, well, they're not on my wing of the party, but at the end of the day, the most important thing is we need these seats. we need to have the congressional districts drawn in a way that gives Democrats at least a chance, if they get more votes, to have more representatives.
Yeah, so the 10 is, reasonably arbitrary, but I will say that the number stays the same, but the people that we're supporting is going to change each month. So we are going to be recalibrating based on, how the first month turns out. If we have a candidate who, was on the first round and we're looking at their numbers and we're feeling pretty confident, then we're going to sub in someone else. On the question about the ideology, that's definitely something I've been thinking a lot about. It was something we didn't weight heavily in our Give Smart initiative. And what I am doing right now, we're actually working on about 4 different down ballot projects that are each going to have different missions, because we really want people to feel empowered when they're giving money down ballots. So we are planning and should be rolling out very shortly an initiative that is explicitly focused only on progressive candidates. And then we will have climate and a very interesting immigration criminal justice initiative as well.
And I assume you're doing those with like Slate Gab Fest and who else? What else are you going to do? Like one with the Joe Rogan show or something like that?
Sam, do you want to partner with us on the progressive down ballot?
We can talk about that. Right. Sure, we can talk about that.
Come by happy hour and we'll talk about it.
I very well may do that. All right, so
you just negged me into partnering with you on.
That's how do you think? What do you think this is all about? How do you think this business got built? So all right, so we put a link to the F Gerrymandering campaign at the where you can go to the Act Blue page and you can contribute. I mean, we've been saying this around here for a couple of years. This is the dollar for dollar. This is where you're going to get the most value out of your campaign contributions. And in terms of the long-term health of the country, frankly, it is crucial. And it's quite clear now. It's quite clear what's going to happen at the Supreme Court. They're basically going to say there is no prohibition against partisan gerrymandering, regardless. We've talked about this issue quite a bit. Anthony Kennedy had set it up about 6-7 years ago, 8 years ago, that he just needed some type of way of ask social scientists to come in and help us determine when something was overly gerrymandered. It should be enough to say, when you look at Wisconsin and say Democrats won 56% of the vote, yet Republicans control 64% of the state house. It doesn't make any sense. And if the courts aren't going to do anything about it, which it appears it's not, the only way to fight this is going to be through initiatives like this. And so Virginia is... And
can I say one last thing on that?
Please.
Virginia has 2 kind of centrist senators, not the best governor, lieutenant governor at the current moment. And I think that one thing that I see at these investments down ballot is really building the next bench of, Democrats. And in a lot of cases, I mean, in the last cycle, we were able to put, half a dozen women, progressive women of color who refused to take money from Dominion Energy. And that is the bench of future Congress members, senators, and statewide elected officials. So really investing in young people, investing in young talent is really important, particularly because there is a real age divide within the Democratic Party. Younger representatives and legislators tend to be much more committed to the progressive movement and the values of the progressive movement than the older legislators are.
Okay. And lastly, if you can, I would love Jon Favreau's autograph. That would be great.
Next time I see him, All
right, I appreciate that.
I'll ask for you.
That would be great. He went to Holy Cross. my hometown of Worcester. Yeah. All right. Now let's talk about what's going on with the DCCC, because you and I have talked about this in the past. The last time we talked, it was right after, I think, the DCCC had announced that if you are working with a primary opponent to a sitting Democrat, regardless of who that Democrat is, if you are a vendor, you provide phone banking technology, you provide a website design, you provide list making or polling like you might, Sean, then you are blacklisted by the DCCC, and if you will not get any deals from them or any contracts with them. Just briefly just explain to people why that's a big deal.
Sure. I mean, in a lot of ways, it ended up being not as much of an impediment as the DCCC had hoped, because a lot of vendors are still willing to work with these progressive challengers. And if you want, I can explain why. It's that in the 2018 cycle, there was a lot of new Democrats who are being recruited, not like new Democrats in the sort of caucus, but like new Democrats who, people who hadn't run for office before. And so they really relied heavily on the DCCC to tell them who to work with. So the DCCC was able to sort of like use that power. In this cycle, most of these Democrats are running for a second term in red to blue districts. So if, you already have been using a vendor that you trust, you don't need the DCCC to recommend that vendor for you. But the idea that the DCCC theorized was that basically they were going to be able to starve these primary challengers from vendors. I mean, to some extent it worked. There were, Marie Newman lost, I believe it was a mail vendor and a digital vendor and then a polling vendor. But the problem that the DCCC, I think, didn't foresee was that within a couple of days, they were flooded with mail vendors, digital vendors, and pollsters who were more than willing to work with them.
And who is Marie Newman? Just be cleared on that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry about that. Marie Newman is running against Dan Lipinski. Dan Lipinski is a member of Congress, a Democrat, in finger quotes, from Illinois' 3rd. He is anti-gay. He's the only Democrat who opposed the recent legislation to extend civil rights protections to LGBT Americans that Democrats passed to the House. He is anti-choice. He's the only Democrat who is a member of the pro-life caucus, and not only is he a member, he is actually the co-chair of the pro-life caucus. He voted against the Affordable Care Act after working to water down contraception access. And then he actually refused to endorse Obama in 2012. So
now he comes from a deep red. Yeah. He must come from a deep red district, right? I mean, that's the only way that you could justify having a Democrat who votes on all of the at least substantial issues that we talk about over the past couple of years with Republicans. So his district must be super deep red for the DCCC to be protecting him, because you don't understand, Sean. If it's not for Dan Lipinski, that district would obviously have a Republican, correct?
Well, turns out that is not true. That district, Clinton won it by double digits. It is a safe district. It's so safe that Republicans basically don't even bother contesting it. Last cycle, the person who ended up winning the Republican primary was a literal neo-Nazi. So, yeah, it's not a district that Republicans are interested in contesting. It will not be a district that they're going to contest if Newman won. There is absolutely no excuse for protecting Dan Lipinski. And, to be honest, it's really despicable at a time when Republicans are passing abortion bans that the congressional arm of the Democratic Party is, working tooth and nail to protect a an anti-choice incumbent.
Didn't Cheryl Bustos, didn't she just now have to pull out of a fundraiser for Lipinski because of this? And she is is she the chair of the DCCC?
Yeah, she is, and it's actually worth noting.
Is she going to get on a blacklist because of this?
I mean,
is she going to blacklist herself?
I mean, if you take a look at last cycle, Ben Ray Lujan was the chair of the DCCC. He's not, I think, like a sort of Ilhan Omar or AOC style progressive, but he is, to the left of center of the Democratic caucus, and he actually refused to endorse Dan Lipinski. And at the time, reporters were speculating the reason he refused to endorse Dan Lipinski is that Dan Lipinski refuses to pay dues to the DCCC. He says he refuses to pay dues because he wants to only select members who agree with his right-wing values. So not only is the DCCC going to bat for this horrible incumbent, they're going to bat for an incumbent who doesn't even pay dues. So by their own sort of logic, this is not someone that they should be protecting. It's quite frankly just, I think, shows how, how much this institution has been poisoned. And Sherry Bustos, she first came to national prominence by sort of playing up the fact that she's a Democrat in a Obama-Trump district, and her goal is to go to war with the progressive wing of the party. And I think that why she's so invested in this race is because she wants to crush progressives, and she views Dan Lipinski as a vehicle to do that.
What do you think it's about Lipinski, or do you think it's just about the institution? I mean, if it sort of feels like maybe Lipinski, I don't know, has pictures of him and Obama in some compromising situation. I mean, what is that? What is that about?
So I really think that there's two things working here. One is that the way that Bustos won the DCCC chair was promising to really take a hard line on challengers and really making sort of incumbent protection from primaries her top priority, which is, ironic given that the DCCC always pitches itself publicly as this organization focused on frontline Democrats. But they didn't choose Bustos because they wanted to win over frontline Democrats. They picked Bustos to protect centrist incumbents in safe seats. The second thing is that if you look at sort of Bustos' entire career, the big glitzy political profiles of her big sort of theory of the case is that Democrats have gone too far to the left and they need to sort of move back to the center to win elections. And I think that what she sees with Lipinski is this opportunity to go to the caucus and say, look, Dan Lipinski is the worst of the worst when it comes to safe seat Democrats, but I was able to protect him. I was able to beat back this progressive insurgency. If you make me, speaker, I'll make sure you never hear from these progressives again. I really do believe that she wants to crush the progressive movement, and she wants to make Illinois 3rd an example of her
just how far.
To do so.
Yeah,
so,
that's
and that's why I think progressives need to really invest in this district, because if she wins, she's betting that is going to crush the momentum going into places like New York, where there are a ton of incumbents who are facing challenges.
That's
and
fascinating.
She's right.
That's fascinating. I mean, the so many times in so many of these dynamics, the last thing you think about is not because there's an actual investment in this fight, but that it creates a precedent or it creates a model or it's symbolic of something, ends up being the answer why these things are fought, so that they don't even have to fight the later fights down the road. I mean, I've heard that story many, many times in a bunch of different contexts. All right, Sean, let me ask you this, and this is just a last question, and it's a little bit meta because this comes up, and it's going to come up over the course of the primary because certainly there will be there's at least a percentage, you know that's what you work with all the time, that there may be a candidate who wins who some of us don't like in the primary. This came up in 2016. It comes up now. Why you are clearly associate yourself with views that are to the left of where certainly the establishment of the Democratic Party is, certainly the major institutions within the party, and probably with most of the party you're to the left of. Why do you expend your energies on these projects within the Democratic Party as opposed to on the outside of the Democratic Party?
Sure. Yeah, this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently. I think that the goal of the progressive left should be to become a member in good standing of the sort of broad Democratic Party apparatus. And by that I don't mean like, the DNC. I don't even mean for the most case, like the DCCC. The Democratic Party is this sort of broad network of activists and organizations that are broadly like sort of invested in the Democratic Party winning elections. And I think that if the progressive left has a meaningful caucus within Congress, has, like real organizational grassroots organizations that are capable of influencing Democratic primaries, and has, a base of people who are really committed to the ideals of the Democratic Party, even if not often the ways that gets diluted down in policymaking, we can start to influence that institution and move it in our direction. And I think that at the end of the day, many people who think of themselves as Democrats hold ideals that are very close to my own. They're supportive of the Green New Deal. They're supportive of Medicare for all. They think that ICE is run amok and needs to be reined in, if not abolished. And I think that by taking that case to those voters, we can win them over to our vision. And I'm fully capable of believing that was not true in the past. But I think that it is true now more and more that particularly the next generation of Democrats holds these ideals, and that we should create avenues for them to gain power and to wield that influence. And I think that, we often can overstate the sort of influence of the left independent of the Democratic Party. But with the control, if we control and have a say in that institution, we can do amazing things. I really look at the conservative movement in the Republican Party as a sort of vision of that.
Sean McElwee, Data for Progress. We'll put a link to the Gerrymandering, despite who you ended up.
I'm serious. I'm serious. Let's do one together.
We will talk about this. We will.
All right.
We will talk about it. Absolutely.
I want to get your thoughts on my Meditake at some point, though.
On your what? Well, we can get
your thoughts on my Meditake.
Your thoughts on your Meditag?
Meditake. The things I just said.
Oh, the Meditake. Yes. No, I mean, I largely, I agree. There's, it would be nice to own the levers of the apparatus, frankly, and to at least have a hand on the apparatus. That's, I like the idea of taking control of pre-existing institutions. That is the most successful route, in my estimation, to change. But we will talk more about that in the future. Sean McElwee.
Just one. Okay.
What? What is it?
I was just going to note, like AOC, I think that there are a lot of people who have been won over to her view, and a lot of what you might call normie Democrats who see her and look up to her. And I think that's an incredible amount of influence that the left has. And
Huge.
I think it's something that we should invest in doing more and more.
I agree totally. Sean McElwee, Data for Progress. Thanks so much, buddy. We'll talk to you later.
Have a good one.
Bye. Does great work. not necessarily the best choice of podcast to align to. I don't know. I forgot to ask him. Have you seen him on that show? Yeah. Huh. Wonder how that happened.
It definitely makes me question his judgment a little bit.
Well, that's all right. All right, folks. We're going to take a break. Head into the fun half. As you know, that happens after this, after the free half of the program. And the free half is, of course, completely funded. Not completely. We do have ads. So I would say closer to like 90%, 93% funded by our members. It's our members who do this. And to say thank you to our members, we give members extra time. We also give them things commercial free. And I'm not gonna be creepy about it, but we like them. We like them more. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. Head over to JoinTheMajorityReport.com. Become one of those people who support this show and get this extra stuff. And of course, if you are one of those people who you've run into some financial difficulties right now, some people living on a fixed income, some people run into just life stuff happens, but you would like the extra content every day, it would be helpful to you and you're interested in it, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Give us a little bit of time and we will hook you up. We don't reject anybody for the sake of cash. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. Also, JustCoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Support a great company. JustCoffee.coop is a great employee-owned enterprise that is very, very supportive of the suppliers of its coffee. And you can get the Majority Report blend. There will be no TMBS this week because Michael has taken a vow of silence. But Jamie has not.
It's true.
Do tell.
All right. So this week on the Antifada, I'm so excited. We have a new History as a Weapon out today. It's a two-parter because this is really a doozy. We're talking about, well, I say we. I'm actually not on it. It's Sean and Matt Chrisman from Chapo Trap House. It's only mildly annoying to me that I'm not on the best thing that we probably do, but I don't have all the history that they do. So in this History as a Weapon, titled Pivotal Decade, the 1970s, Sean and Matt break down the political economy of stagflation, the rise of Nixon and the politics of aggrievement, the backlash to 60s social movements, the waning influence of trade unions, and the failure of the New Politics Democrats to synthesize all of these currents into some sort of lasting working class coalition. They also discuss the early formation of what we recognize today as neoliberalism and the degree to which it was overdetermined by the 1970s crisis of capitalist accumulation. So check that out. It's for patrons. We may eventually unlock it. We usually do that with most of our stuff, but I shouldn't say that. And part 2 is out on Friday, so check it out.
Matt.
Brand new episode of Literary Hangover on Margaret Fuller. She was a transcendentalist, editor and writer. She wrote Woman in the 19th Century. The cool thing about her is, the transcendentalists like Emerson are known for their self-reliant, sort of individualistic sort of thing. And Fuller realized that as a woman, she can't just, as Jordan Peterson would say, clean up your own room. There's obstacles in society that are stopping you from doing that. So she's very interesting, became a socialist, was the first foreign correspondent as a female, and she reported on the late 1840s revolutions in Europe.
Wow. I did not know that. Just a reminder, mentioned this up front. Somebody on Twitter has corrected me. Just a point about the Brexit party majority. The combined vote for all the Remain parties was much higher than the combined Brexit parties. So that's that.
So I guess UKIP is no more, and it's basically the Brexit party.
Indeed. So, all right, going to take a quick break. Head into the fun half. 646-257-9232. 3920. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
I gotta say, every time I watch and listen to that thing, I am amazed. Like each time I think I see something new on it, I just cannot get over that thing.
It rewards repeated listenings and viewings.
It certainly does.
I think it's just Bullprog doing it all too.
It's nuts.
Like, did he have that video in his head when he made the song? Or she? My bad.
I think so. But yeah, we had the song like for 6 months, and then all of a sudden the video came out.
The video makes so much more sense.
Yeah, but I wonder if it went if it was built that way. That's my ongoing question about that. But let's go to the IM's column from Nebraska. My congressman is hosting a town hall this week. He is a climate change denier. Is it worth to press him on the issue, or does he just deserve verbal abuse on the microphone?
I think it's better to press the issue in a sly, sort of semi-earnest kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then if it is recorded, you're not just doing it for him, you're doing it for everybody watching.
Yeah, let the people at home do the, call him an idiot and stuff.
Right. I mean, I always think that, like, if you approach it with something like, the 9 out of 10 doctors have told you have cancer. One says you don't. I mean, and even to be honest with you, it's really closer to like 99 doctors have told you that you have cancer. One tells you that you haven't, and that one who tells you doesn't is an optometrist. But do 9 out of 10. Always give a little bit in that way, because and you say, wouldn't you undergo treatment? Wouldn't you not say, like, well, treatment's going to be expensive, and there is that one doctor who said I don't have cancer, so I mean, I really don't want to spend all this money on treatment, and there is a doctor who says I don't have cancer, so I'm not going to do it. I mean, I think that's basically what you throw out there, because the idea is that, look, you're not going to, beating up on him is not going to change his mind. And what you really want to do is you want to plant a little seed of doubt in the minds of everybody there at that town hall, and make the congressman feel like make that palpable in the room, and that's going to be helpful. Jonathan Armstead, Sam, you're a better man than me. I don't know if I could interview a guest who partnered with Pod Save America. Once I heard them say that, I would just reply, thank you for saying that, Sean. You are a madman. Goodbye. Pajama Boy. Hey, Sam, I think Michael forgot to mention his retreat was so that he could really get into the Marianne mindset. He's ditching Bernie for Marianne.
Yes.
Ryan from Ohio. Sam, if it makes you feel any more superior to the Pod Save guys, you should know that the name they came up with is a play on Fuck Jerry, which makes it a horrible name. I'm sure you would have thought of a much better one.
Oh, my God. I was going to have you ask him about that, but I just thought it was too frivolous a question.
They made that in their video about it. They made that pretty explicit.
The branding firm behind Fire Festival, right?
Yeah. Rackham. Sam, Sean's characterizing of the blacklist as not a big deal is not entirely true. I'm in the district, and Newman is still having trouble securing vendors that are actually in the district to work on some basic things. Definitely folks are looking for someone to donate to. Marie Newman needs the help. Also, Bustos pulled out of a fundraiser, but is still committed to raise money quietly for Lipinski. Interesting. Dodie Century. I don't know. You folks should use that Attention Libertarians Debate Sam Seder call now as the stream thumbnail on YouTube sometimes. It might bring in some libertarian callers. Sure. Colleen from Connecticut, please do your part to stop the spread of fake news. 10 is a triangular number. It is not a round number.
Math.
Come on, math people.
Shadia Stevens. Sam, you were very mean to that nice boy, Sean. I don't think that I was joking. Lobster Cuck. Ruben currently melting down at Twitter due to mild IDW on IDW criticism in Colette. Well, I mean, since you brought that up, look at what I have right here in my hand. Now, I haven't read it fully. I just have seen its characterization, and I did. I'm going to cop to this. I did, in fact, tweet about it to Dave. Can we bring up my tweet? Because I want to. So this is the article: How the IDW Can Avoid the Tribalist Pull. And it basically, talks about the author is. I thought I had it on here. Who's the author? It's Kathy Young, and she refers to herself as being sympathetic and sometimes critical observer of the IDW, arguably something of a fellow traveler. She's not overly fond of the term intellectual dark web, but intellectual dissent web would also work. Maybe. Okay. I don't know. And anyways, she talks about, Harris, and then goes through here, and then you get through some of this, and then where do we get to? Dave Rubin is mentioning this. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay, page 3 on my thing. However, it's equally essential for such a movement to stand against the identitarian populist right. And that can be a blind spot for some IDW figures. Would you mind highlighting this right there? Yeah, this paragraph right here. Yeah, and then here. Rubin, this is the Dave Rubin, I believe, has a particularly troubling track record in this regard. I should note that I was a guest on his show in 2016 and had an entirely positive experience.
Imagine that.
He has been rightly criticized, not only by progressives, but as libertarians, as Anthony Fisher, for providing a sympathetic forum to far-right activists, including Paul Joseph Watson, Mike Cernovich, Stefan Malanieu, and Lauren Southern. Rubin and his supporters typically respond that he cannot be faulted for interviewing controversial guests. True enough. However, where have we heard this critique before? He doesn't simply have them on, but treats them as allies against SJWs or the regressive left and allows them to masquerade as reasonable anti-PC centrists.
I have to say that my brain is still in recovery mode from taking in so many high-level important ideas.
There is a video compilation of Rubin addressing Watson, a YouTuber who's promoted conspiracy theories about water fluoridation, I can't speak today, Barack Obama's birth certificate, and the 2007 Virginia Tech shooting. Cernovich, who has flogged pedophilia panics and declared that diversity is code for white genocide, I would also add, was actively denying the existence of date rape online, also pushed Pizzagate heavily, not to mention is a failed getting a contributor fired at NBC-er. Anyways, also, and Molyneux, who routinely rants about low IQ rapey minorities as fellow members of a new center. Here is what the new center looks like according to Dave Rubin. Someone put up this video.
Guys like you and me, our whole fucking lives, we're going to be like, in 10 years, we'll be fighting the right again. And then in another 10 years, we'll be fighting the left again.
Yeah, so that center. So where do you actually consider yourself politically? I think I have a good sense, and one of the things we've been talking about here is sort of this new growing center.
So 5 years ago, where liberals and conservatives were just fighting about everything, now actually there's a new center developing, and I think both of us are sort of in that.
So I guess when this writer says that he is including them in the new center, like literally. And he goes on to say, let's see, when Southern, a Canadian ex-libertarian turned white identitarian, appeared on Rubin's show, she argued unchallenged that the alt-right icon Richard Spencer was not really a white supremacist, but merely a supporter of a white ethno-state.
Southern also appeared on Ben Shapiro's show.
Interesting.
It's kind of like the difference between pedophilia and ephebophilia.
Now,
you know?
all of what she's written here is, I would say, the only editorial is that stuff's a problem. Everything else is just completely factual, right? Like, we just saw a video of Dave Rubin saying to all those guys, you and I are part of the new center. And she thinks it's problematic to define them as the new center. And what's Dave's response here? Is he upset about this? Can we check that out? Let's see. Oh, bonus special for Kathy. Oh, he's attacking her now. Here's a primer on what nationalism and populism actually are, courtesy of Yazani, author of The Virtue of Nationalism. Oh, wow. He's really upset about this. What else does he say? Wait, is this his whole thread on this?
This is all from today, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Hey, this is really upsetting to me. Dave, I just, can everybody just go away for a minute? Because I just want to talk to Dave alone. And this, of course, is the tweet that I put out. Well, let's turn to that in a moment. I just want to say to Dave, listen to me. As you like to say, Twitter is not real life. I think you're getting a little bit upset, and I think you just got to let the ideas be out there and refute them. And now we can cut to my tweet because as I said, hey, Rubin report condolences. It seems like the IDW is culling the herd. That's just a way of saying that they're trying to cut ties with you in some way. Hang in there, brother. Seems like nobody on the right is open to ideas. Want to come on the show to discuss? And then, of course, I did the hashtag solidarity. Dave, my door, metaphorically speaking, is always open. And I'm happy to come on your program and talk about it if it would help. Or you can come on my program and talk about it. Or if you just want to meet for coffee and are willing to videotape it and take sound, I would do that too. So
you hate to see the IDW circling the wagons.
I hate to see that. It's you don't want to see the IDW circling the wagons around Dave Rubin and keeping everyone away from him.
Yeah, keeping him. Yeah,
that's really big of you.
Yeah. So there's that. Calling from an 832 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hello?
Hello.
Okay, so, hello. My name is Ryan. I'm from Houston, Texas.
Okay, Ryan. What's on your mind?
Okay, so I think I had a comment on, or a question, or I guess an opinion on your second to last phone call on Wednesday. After
you may need to be a little bit more specific as to the content of that call.
Oh yes, let me go ahead. After your second to last phone call concerning the support for impeachment, I thought perhaps impeaching Donald Trump isn't the greatest idea. Just to start off with, my intentions here are to stop Donald Trump as much as you do. But I think Donald Trump symbolizes the hypocrisy of the Republican Party, and I believe that a proportion of Christians, a large portion of the right. I grew up in Houston. I believe the Christians know this. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and living in a red state, this has been my experience. Democrats I know walk in lockstep against Donald Trump, recognizing that he's no good for our country, at least coming from my college experience. Of course, some of my Republican friends still voice support for Donald Trump, but I have great success convincing the religious right to recognize their hypocrisy in voting for the antithesis of American values. So I was wondering if you could explain why you think impeachment was a good idea, because I'm a recent listener to the show. I just started about a week ago. I've been listening every day, so I haven't had time to go back and hear your comments on impeachment.
I mean, I've been, I think, sort of, I wouldn't say hugely skeptical of impeachment, but pretty skeptical of impeachment in the past, insofar as at one point, my biggest concern was that if he wins the election, I'm not saying that impeachment will help him win election, but if he wins the election after impeach, that the House really has no more arrows in their quiver. But I think the big reason why you impeach now is because he has earned it. And there is, and then I would just say, just on an ethical and and in terms of holding people in power to account, if you do not impeach him, even though you will not remove him, Mitch McConnell today announced, we won't deal with impeachment at all. He's trying to throw hot water on it, or cold water. Okay. And I think Nancy Pelosi should get up there and say, we're going to impeach him, or we're going to start the process. Let's put it this way. We're going to start the process. It will give us more subpoena power, because impeachment subpoenas issued under impeachment inquiry has more power as viewed by the courts to compel people to testify. And if we impeach him and we send it to the Senate, I have every reason to believe that the Republican Party has lost its way so much that they won't even take it up. And that will be on them.
I agree.
The voters, but I'm saying this is what Pelosi should say from rhetorically, because I think there's political value in this. I mean, aside from it's super important to hold powerful people accountable and show them at least there is some will by some sector of society to say you cannot do this. Even if we can't stop you or remove you from office, we can say you cannot do this. It's important to put down a marker. But if Pelosi gets up there, she can put it on the Republicans for not convicting him in the Senate. And the flip side of this is that there is a huge price, I think, a bigger price to be paid to not impeaching him politically than impeaching him. I think you will lose, like, your message about Donald Trump becomes incredibly muddled if you do not impeach him.
I see.
And
well, my opinion is I believe that we should have the greatest. I believe if you impeach him, you mobilize the right into basically saying, like, of course Fox News is going to spin this. They're going to say, they're trying to take Donald Trump, and I believe that this is going to run in. Do you think it'll run through the election, or I believe that should be a longer process. It shouldn't be, if we do impeach him, it shouldn't be like right before the election, or because I do think they're going to run it through the election.
I think it could take anywhere from like six to 12 months theoretically. And you would be, you could impeach him and he could run because he's not going to get thrown out of office. Will it mobilize Republican voters? Republican voters are already mobilized. They're already mobilized. Listen, the Democrats just had the largest victory in the history of midterm elections. Okay, not in terms of seats because we know those are gerrymandered, but in terms of votes. And with that said, the Republicans had one of their best get out the votes maybe in the history of midterm elections as well. So this is not going to be about, there's going to be some demobilization you got to be worried about, but how would Republicans get more mobilized than they were in 2018?
Because I believe the right plan to go forward is because if you look at the history of the elections, Democrats, only Republicans have held the House of Republicans for one term at a time. Historically, Democrats have held it for two terms or more. So I believe that because I think the greatest decision the greatest choice for our country, what I think about is the children who grow up looking at this leader and seeing this adulterous.
I agree. I know what you're saying. Let me just characterize your argument, and I don't know. Different people have this, but your argument is Democratic voters are going to get out there in droves no matter what, even if the impeachment doesn't happen. They're not going to be demotivated, but Republicans could get more motivated. Traditionally, they don't do as well on presidential election years, et cetera, et cetera. You may be right. You may be wrong. That's, basically in that type of situation, I default to doing the thing that is really the best thing to be done, sort of, I don't want to say morally, but at least in terms of ethically and structurally. And to me, that is hold powerful people to account. All right, got to jump. Appreciate the call, though. Good call.
Okay,
You're not going to get white evangelicals to abandon Trump. It's just not happening.
I think the argument is not that they will vote for the Democrat, but they just will not show up. Now, that has happened in the past. There is an argument that were it not for that open seat on the Supreme Court, you would not have had that kind of mobilization. 1-to-1, our buddy here can convince maybe some fundamentalist Christians that, hey, you're being a little bit hypocritical. And maybe it's because if there isn't an open seat, there isn't as much of a prize there for them. The stakes aren't quite as high, it doesn't feel like.
Well, he's already shown that he's going to give them what they want.
Exactly. And so I agree. I'm just clarifying that I think the idea is that you demobilize them as opposed to convert them. Like they just feel so gross that they don't go vote. But, it didn't quite happen in the right way. It was supposed to in 2016. Calling from a 610 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
Yes, it is you. Of course it is.
It's me from Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So with the tariffs and something you had on a few months ago as far as illegal when you were in Las Vegas, a lot of the compounds for drugs come from China.
Yes.
As rare earth minerals, which are used in technological equipment. what happens to that with tariffs going up? And in case there's ever any, I don't know if the right word is hostilities, whether it be just verbal, not military action, what does the U.S. do without those two things?
I don't know. I think it's problematic. There's a strong argument that it may be problematic from a national security, and I'm using that term broadly. I don't mean just in terms of like military, but in terms of like technological, terms of infrastructure, food in some instances, to have outsourced your supply chain to a rival that has its own agenda that is unaligned, misaligned sometimes with yours. I don't know what happens with this tariff stuff. I really don't. I just, because
of course we have Boeing as well. They've given up all technology, which probably most of it was even U.S. military and government technology, not really in quote Boeing's.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's problematic, but I don't know the solution. I don't know what's going to happen with this, but appreciate the call.
Oh, well, another quick question.
Nope. Sorry. We have a new phone system, and so things are a little bit delayed. I notice when I hang up, it's like he's still there for 30 seconds. Not dead. Oh, since we were talking about Eric Lipinski, we just talked to Sean McElwee, who is out there and pissed about the DCCC protecting, in particular, it's Dan Lipinski, not Eric Lipinski. Why'd you put Eric Lipinski there? Isn't it? Huh? Oh, you ran cross country with him. Okay. But it's Dan Lipinski. And here is New York Times reporter Jonathan Martin talking about what we were just talking about.
But I was in Chicago the last couple of days on this story, talking to activists out there, progressive activists, and I'll tell you what, they are sick of this congressman who has been there for about 10 years now. His dad had the seat before him. It is a seat that looks a lot like the ones that AOC won in New York and Presley won in Boston last year. Historically, kind of cops and firefighters, working class Polish and Irish, now much more affluent and diverse. And Congressman, I think, is facing some real challenges going into next year. He won by 2 points last year in his primary, facing the same challenger next year. And the question is, will Democrats support somebody who on this central issue isn't with them?
So they're talking about that challenge by Marie Newman to Dan Lipinski. And this could be the year that Dan Lipinski goes. And that's why, we were mentioning, I just want to reiterate this. So many times, the fight that you're looking at is really just the shadow of the real fight that's going on. And so the DCCC, they don't care about Dan Lipinski, more than likely. They just need to set a precedent. And they need to be able to go and say, look at who we would protect. If we had Dan Lipinski's back, I don't even need to make the case to you that we have your back. Because obviously we do. And if Dan Lipinski, we help Dan Lipinski win, then I got news for you. Anybody who's going to challenge somebody whose credentials are not so horrific as Dan Lipinski's, forget about it. You don't even need to come. Don't even bother.
Yeah, it's a show of force. Right?
It's a show of force. It is the, on some level, it's like that Fonzie theory where he told Richie Cunningham. Of course, I don't know if you guys know Happy Days. It's an old, yeah.
This is where he hits the music box.
He hits the jukebox. But he basically told Richie Cunningham, like, I hit one guy once, and I've never had to hit anybody again. This also reminds me, and you can go back and listen to this. I don't know when we did this interview, maybe in 2012, where Shannon Moore up in Alaska, used to do talk radio up there, was fighting for Pebble Mine, and that has come back around. But she told me this story about going in with the lawyers for Pebble Mine. They want to mine in this area that is like the number one source of wild salmon in the country. And the part about this story I specifically remember, she went in there with all sorts of facts and figures. She made the case. She had the case. She showed it to the lawyers. She had an opportunity to sit down with lawyers and explain it to them. She was like, I'm convinced that this is going to be a no-brainer for them. And at the end, they were like, we don't care about Pebble Mine. We don't care about this or any of that. We're fighting this so hard because we cannot let the EPA win. We cannot let activists win. Because if we do, that puts in jeopardy all the other places. We don't care about this one thing, but we will fight to the death for it because this one thing implicates the whole world for us. And I think that's what's going on with Dan Lipinski for the DCCC. Less about Dan Lipinski, more about the precedent it sets. And that's the way that you should view this and why it should be important to progressives. Because this is the fight that it's not just about Dan Lipinski. Understand, it's basically saying we start with Lipinski and then we come to you unless you start voting better. That's basically it. That's, frankly, the way it worked with the Republicans. That's, at the time it wasn't the Tea Party. It was Grover Norquist and Club for Growth. And I remember in Pennsylvania, I think it's years ago, was it the Senate, the senator from there before when it was just, I can't remember his name now, but he died. But Pat Toomey was running against him. And everybody's like, that guy's a loon. He's never going to win. And they kept pushing and pushing, and eventually he ran a couple of times. He won. And that's basically what I think the era we are in on the left.
It's pretty rich of Lipinski to say that shunning, this is how we got President Trump. People felt like they weren't welcome in the party.
That is just bizarre.
It does bear mentioning, though, like the forces pulling the Republican Party to quote unquote the right. I guess we talk about this a lot, like how much of this is Trump and how much of it is just normal Republican stuff. I think they went a little bit easier to the right than the Democratic Party would go to the left. But we'll see.
Well, yeah. I think that is too. I think that's too narrow of a perspective. I think they started out more to the right than the delta between the Democrats and the left. A, B. I would also say that there was far more resources behind the Tea Party that were distinct from the Republican Party. In terms of like Koch money and whatnot. I mean, the Koch brothers,
not like a people-powered, people versus money grassroots thing,
right? And the Koch brothers have an electoral, a basically a data operation that dwarfs the Republican Party now, and so they have I mean, in many respects, I think I used to describe it as it's Coke and Pepsi. They're all the same industry. There's just different companies in there. And the difference between the Coke and the Pepsi is not so great.
You know what a fun thing about the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany was? About the businessmen. They did fund the Nazi Party, but they also funded everything else on the right, too. It was just the Nazis who could get the popularity behind it.
Right. They're throwing down 1,000 seeds will bloom, and theirs just happened to catch. On the left, you're just not seeding as many different places. And so it's structural. It's much harder, without a doubt. And the left will never, well, I don't know if never, but part of it also on the right was that they promoted this. They built their Frankenstein. They just thought that they could control it. I played that game, Secret Hitler, have you heard of that? It's like Mafia. Have you heard of that game?
Yeah.
I've never played Mafia, but it's Secret Hitler.
The video game Mafia?
No, it's not a
party game.
It's actually a party game. Yeah.
I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Wow, Matt.
Boom. So Joe Biden has a strategy. And this strategy, I think if you've been a regular listener to the program, makes total sense, at least based upon my theory as to why Joe Biden will ultimately falter. Now, he may not. I have conceded every time I've talked about this. This may be a product of motivated reasoning, as they call it, maybe aspirational on my part. But I'm convinced by the fall, deep into the fall, Joe Biden will be maybe third in the polling instead of first. And the reason my theory is based on the idea that people right now who are supportive of Joe Biden largely are doing so because they perceive him as Uncle Joe and as Obama's vice president. And they do not have a recollection of Joe Biden, the man Joe Biden, who ran unsuccessfully for president in 1988 and ran unsuccessfully for president in 2008 and was horrible in the Anita Hill hearings and was horrible on things like protecting credit card businesses' interests over human beings' interests in the writing of the bankruptcy bill, and horrible on race in other areas. I mean, just on and on. And I am convinced that over the course of when people start paying attention to the primary, people are going to see that. Some of them are going to get turned off. Then all of a sudden, his electoral invincibility is going to be less, which has also been a key selling point for him. So what do you do if you believe that too and you're Joe Biden? I'll tell you what you do. Very little.
Adrian, meanwhile, the Washington Post is reporting that Joe Biden is decided to run a, quote, campaign of limited exposure. How effective of a strategy could that be?
Well, Craig, I don't think this is going to serve Joe Biden well in the long run, because candidates have to expose themselves to the people. They have to, show who they truly are to voters and show their personality. And I think when you have staff potentially siphoning them off and not allowing them to, press the flesh, as we say in politics, on the campaign trail and really get to know folks by quarantining them off, I think that can be a dangerous trajectory, especially in this field of 24 candidates. And we all know, Allie's on the ground in Iowa right now. We all know that Iowa voters, they flirt with a lot of candidates. It's almost like dating. They go on a lot of dates with candidates, and then they ultimately decide who they want to support. But they want to meet everybody. They want to have real conversations. And I think if Joe Biden's team is somehow sectioning him off from that ability, then that's going to hurt him in the long run.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think that's going to help him in the long run, because people have an idea of him in their mind, and there's nothing worse than having an ideal of someone in their mind and then actually dealing with the real person. So Joe Biden is smart to hide. The problem may end up being when people say, maybe this isn't an energy thing. Maybe it's Joe Biden making it sound like we're going to play the incumbent game, where the incumbent usually stays in the White House and doesn't come out and that type of thing. But maybe what's really going on is Joe Biden just can't handle the campaign trail.
Looks like we got another low energy guy.
Could be.
Honestly,
I don't know.
That still is probably the best strategy for him. And this
is.
Hillary lady was so stuck on personalities. People know his personality. Lots of people like his personality. The thing that they really don't want people to see is his policies and his record.
I don't know if people even know his personality in the same way. They might. But
he's like Obama's curmudgeonly, lovable, old friend, sidekick guy.
The Joe Biden from The Onion magazine, basically.
Yes, but the problem is that when he gets up on stage with other people, how is he going to react? And again, this is going to come down to how lucky is Joe Biden. It's going to be a coin toss on some level. If he's up there, particularly with Elizabeth Warren, I think that's extremely could have extremely detrimental outcome for Joe Biden. He'll get critique from other people, and other people are situated, but Elizabeth Warren practically entered politics on some level because of Joe Biden. And she's going to go directly at him because she's going to have to. and she is not going to be as afraid to alienate his voters as I think all the other candidates might be. And Joe Biden's condescending, sort of dismissive qualities are not going to look so good when he's saying that to, the nice lady from the Midwest.
I don't know. We still live in such a sexist country, though. Like, it comes down to whether people are going to be choosing based on policy or based on their general vibe. Because I think if you go based on general vibe, Joe Biden beats Elizabeth Warren. People think he's cool for some reason.
Like I say, what I am banking on is that that's going to change when they're sitting on a stage together. But you may be right.
Or they could just hear her being like this shrill, whiny woman, like, we need to protect consumers, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, forgive me, Father. Ha, ha, ha.
I totally concede
down,
that
honey.
could happen, too. We're going to see. That's why we're going to do complete coverage of the debates in June and July and August and September, October, November, whenever the debates are. That's why we will be doing all of that.
Hours and hours of debates.
Calling from a 904 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name's Carl, calling from Des Moines.
Carl from Des Moines.
Hold on.
What's on your
mind?
mind?
Hold on 1 second here.
Wait a second. What?
Hey, so, yeah, I've got a couple things on my mind today, but I'm kind of worried. First-time caller, a little nervous. I don't want you to hate me for fact-checking you.
Oh, well, I might.
Yeah, I'm not with like the Troop Tulsi or whatever.
Okay.
But like about a week and a half, you ran a thing about like there's a graphic about like voting for the military under Trump, and it had that Tulsi had apparently voted for the 2019 like $717 billion, and I was recently involved in a debate online, and I referenced this, and I got eaten up pretty quickly. And then I did the research myself, and I wondered if maybe that information in that graphic was maybe incorrect, and it appears maybe that Tulsi has indeed voted 3 times against Trump's military budget.
I got to be honest with you.
I did read over the week.
I got to be honest with you. That was not me who did that. It was Michael, contributor here.
Well, you referenced the article. You referenced the article on your show first. Yes, you are right. Michael did that graphic on the show.
I didn't reference Tulsi Gabbard. Hello. I didn't reference Tulsi Gabbard. I referenced. I think if anything, I referenced that the Senate had voted to last week, if I recall correctly. I referenced that the Senate Armed Services Committee voted to increase the Pentagon budget for the second year in a row. I don't ever remember even contemplating how Tulsi Gabbard voted on it.
Okay, well, regardless, like all I'm saying is like there might be something wrong with this article. So maybe this is just something from Michael then. Don't mean to offend you, Sam. Again, I didn't. Like I said, I wasn't on Troop Tulsi or anything, but
listen, I am more than happy to dig into it and tell Michael to correct it if it was wrong. I have no problem with Troop Tulsi or Group Tulsi or I have no. That doesn't bother me. I'm not in any way offended. I just am not familiar at all with even the assertion that she had voted, had never contemplated. If you had asked me, I would have assumed that she would have voted against it. Sometimes people do things for procedural reasons. I don't know. I think my issues with her have less to do with. I think we're fairly aligned with her in terms of intervention. I think that in most instances we should not be intervening in any of this stuff. I certainly have been outspoken about not going into Syria since 2011, at least on television. And
agreed.
With that said, I also don't think that makes Assad some type of martyr or good guy. I think he's a horrible human being, a torturer, and about as low and despicable as you can get. But for me, the calculation is, can we help that situation or can we make it worse? And from my perspective, all the evidence points that we can make it worse. So the Tulsi thing, I'll ask Michael about it, but I honestly don't.
One thing, though, Code Pink did an article over the weekend about who they thought the best candidates were in terms of their anti-war position.
Yeah.
And this article very well, I think, articulates each candidate for, the Democratic primary for president. It very well details their stance. And I think it really gets at the heart of, where Tulsi has been and how she sometimes equivocates on this. And I think some of the facts put forward in this article match up perhaps better than that other article referenced.
Well, send it to us. Send it to us at
previously.
majorityreporters@gmail.com.
Okay.
I appreciate the call. I got to be honest with folks. I don't think that Tulsi Gabbard is a major force in this election in terms of her ability to win. I think she would be a good voice to have on the debate stage because in some narrow sets of stuff, not the least of which, our militarism, I think that she's pretty good. And so I, welcome that on there to challenge different people about it. But I don't talk about her candidacy that much because Twitter's not real life in that respect. I mean, I'm interested in who has the best chance of the candidates that are declared to win that are most closely aligned to basically issues that I care about. And I would also add that I think are that the presidency can have some influence on, or because I think there's an argument that less militarism is downstream from some major changes in the way that we look at power and the way that resources are divvied up in our own society domestically. People follow that. I mean, that I think that you make those changes at home first, and then you're able to project it out much easier. That if people have health care, if people have child care, if people have jobs that do not require them working 60, 70 hours a week or two members of the household just to have, basic subsistence, I think it then becomes easier to shut down bases. I think it becomes easier to pull back on military contracts. I think it becomes more compelling to people to say, we don't need 800 bases around the world. I think it becomes, people have more political power and economic power. And so they say, on one hand, I don't need to go to the military to have a future. And we don't, why are we getting involved in this stuff? I mean, I just think that the domestic stuff is downstream in my mind. I should say is upstream from the way that we project militarism outside the world. Outside the world.
And not to mention, I mean, not every candidate has said this. I wish they would say it more. To the question of, how are you going to pay for all this stuff? How are you going to pay for welfare state? Take money away from our bloated military spending. That tweet from Elizabeth Warren was kind of terrible, where she connects the Green New Deal and fighting climate change to having a strong military. No, that's not how we're going to do it.
Let's go to, let's do this here. You know who is all in favor of more intervention? And this is going to come as a huge shock. But the daughter of Dick Cheney, who was not only a champion of the idea that the president is a monarch in this country, but that he should use his military might freely and liberally in the broadest sense of the word. Here is Liz Cheney anticipating, right now she's a representative, anticipating maybe bumping up to Senate with the resignation of, what's his face? I can't remember now. Who is it? Well, here is Liz Cheney.
Talk about Iran announcing this week that they're sending 1,500 more U.S. military to the region. Is that the right move, or could that increase the possibility of miscalculation?
It is the right move. And when you look at what we've seen in terms of the threat level, what we've seen in terms of what the Iranians are now doing, and I want to be careful not to talk about classified material and information.
Let me just say this, that little trick there. First of all, she is genetically coded to go and lie to the American public about the threat coming from outside of this country. Genetically coded. And this, I want to be careful. I got news for you. Liz Cheney's she doesn't have access to special documents that show a special, growing threat from Iran. That is such horse crap. Now, I'll tell you how I know this. Well, actually, I've got to be careful about secret sources.
We've seen in terms of the threat level, what we've seen in terms of what the Iranians are now doing, and I want to be careful not to talk about classified material and information, but there's no question but that this threat, as Chairman Thornberry said, is not business as usual, and it's very important for the Iranians to understand that we'll do what's necessary to deter them from attacking us or our interests, and that we'll do what's necessary to make sure they understand we aren't going to simply sit back and allow them to take action that will put our people in harm's way. So I think the president's doing exactly the right thing, and I support the actions.
Pete Buttigieg is calling what he witnessed in Washington this week.
My back and tell me it's raining. Don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining.
Yeah, well, that's what Liz Cheney's doing. She's basically saying it's pouring rain outside, and guess what I'm doing right now? I am urinating on all of you. This is what they're trying to set up. There are secret plans that the Iranians have that we now know about to harm American interests. And if they go through with this is like literally. And what's amazing about this is, at least in her father's era, you would take time and you would build a lie. You wouldn't just go out there and make up something and then just expect everybody to buy it. You would take the time involved and you would invest the effort in lying to the American public so that you could get everybody on board. And these guys these days, that's the problem with this new generation. They just think they can just throw out any dumb lie and everybody's going to buy it. Now, they also may not need the American. They also may have come to the conclusion, like, it doesn't even matter if we have the American public with us. We can do this because, remember, Liz Cheney, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, this whole next crop of neoconservatives, they don't necessarily care about if they get their war with Iran. They know. These guys are still part of that of the same crew who said, like, you guys are part of the reality-based community. What we do is, when you see reality and then you react to it, what we do is we fashion reality. We're going to go make the facts on the ground. We're going to put our ships in such a way, and our assets in such a way, that the chances of Iran bumping into them is increased, right? Like, if I want to, I leave something in the dark in the hallway outside of Saul's door, I know, like, there's a chance he's going to hit it. Maybe I want him to as he walks out because I want to hear what he's doing if he's getting out of bed. And that's what they're engaging in. And they're looking for Iran to mess up and start something and then, I don't know, give the green light to Israel and say, go ahead, bomb them. We'll be right here.
Yeah, with the way Martha Raddatz says, is this the right move or does it increase the chances of miscalculation? It's like it's the right move because it increases the chances for miscalculation.
The answer to that question by Liz Cheney is yes. Yes, it's the right move because it increases the chance of miscalculation.
It's so nuts that they would let her talk about this on TV. Like, what do most people think of when they hear the last name Cheney? Like, probably being lied to about WMDs and, getting into an endless, horrible war in Iraq. Like, if they think they can fool people twice in the exact same way, I mean, they could be right. We'll see.
Yeah, Honey Badger don't care.
They really don't.
Let's listen to Ben Shapiro. This is the pillar of the intellectual pillar of the right, we're told, right? Isn't he the
cool kids philosopher?
The cool kids philosopher. Apparently, it turns out, cool kids, they make stuff up. And where do I have this sheet here? Oh, yeah, they make stuff up. Stuff that even without even having to Google, you're like, wait a second, that's not right. But if you say it in a way that makes it look like you have your other people have humanity, and so I'm going to say it now. This is going to make it appear that I am actually delivering information that is both profound and intellectually rigorous in its presentation. Because why else would I be here? I'm not even someone who can make eye contact with the camera.
Why else would I feel confident enough to speak in the stupid voice if I wasn't saying real things?
When you talk very quickly and you say things that have been pronounced in such a way, with a vocabulary that has been cultivated by some time at an Ivy League school, people tend to accept what you're saying. And they say, with someone with so little amount of charisma, it must be, of course, based on the facts that our people are responding to what my message is. Here he is, trying to argue, just because the facts compel him to, the superiority of the Judeo-Christian world, which apparently he's not even aware is a relatively recent, at least, moniker.
Truth is that the vision of modern science, the idea of hypothesis and hypothesis being rejected by evidence, that sort of science, experimental science, is unique to the West. There's a difference between technological progress, which does exist in a vast number of civilizations, and that technological progress is generally linked to the human need to overcome the environment around them. There's a difference between that and the pure idea of exploring science for its own sake, which then has technical applications later. That is something that seems fairly unique to the West, which is why you see thinkers in the West like Isaac Newton, who are trying to figure out general rules of the universe in a way that very few people were doing in other civilizations. That doesn't mean that every other person in every other civilization was incapable of doing this. Obviously, there were strides in science and mathematics, particularly in the Indian world, as in like India, in the Indian world.
All right, pause it. Well, we're just going to stop here for a little bit. Now, I imagine it hasn't occurred to him that maybe part of the reason why he's more familiar with Isaac Newton has something to do with the language that he spoke. And I am steeped. I don't know. Maybe Ben Shapiro was steeped and raised in a context in which history was presented to him and science and all forms of human achievement were presented to him from a, let's say, Asian-centric, Far East Asian-centric worldview. And he's overcome that to realize that folks like Isaac Newton are the most important folks that we have. But also, what is India? Like, when we're talking about, presumably Isaac Newton's around in the 1600s, 17th century, right? Maybe a little bit early. What is India at that point? Is like the Far East? Is he what he's talking about? Broadly speaking,
the state of India didn't exist during the time frame that they invented.
Like, what differentiates India
stuff
from Pakistan in his mind?
Yeah.
What do you think that is?
Because usually when I hear people talk about different, contributions to science, that's the part where you talk about, algebra and optics and Islam. But I guess
no, maybe not so much. Let's see.
People were doing in other civilizations. That doesn't mean that every other person in every other civilization was incapable of doing this. Obviously, there were strides in science and mathematics, particularly in the Indian world, as in like India, in the Indian world in the first millennia. But the great expanse of science was deeply wedded to, historically speaking, the Judeo-Christian belief that in order to investigate God, you had to investigate God's universe. And that was tied to a Greek natural law, evidentiary-based position, that the way to discover natural rules was to look at the evidence. I mean, that's an Aristotelian idea. So, as I say, this is not to discount any of the discoveries of other civilizations. The question is why the West did it best. And the answer is that the West did it best not just because they were making technological advances. Again, technological advances exist throughout history. The question is, why is it that the West came up with this idea of science, this generalized idea of science, which was then used to create tremendous technological change far beyond what you get if you were just in a field and you needed to figure out how to make a plow work better, for example.
Is there any more okay. All right. First of all, I'm quite sure that the idea of science did not exist but for maybe 100 or 200 years ago. Like these people aren't going like, this is science for science sake. No, they were exploring things about their world and did not codify it in some form, narrow form of academia. Now, in addition to sort of just like instinctively saying like, wait a second, no, that's not, I'm sorry. Judeo-Christians were not the only ones to develop and think about the world and the universe and the physics of things and the sort of the non-tangible things, right? It wasn't just like, oh, the Jews and the Christians, they just left behind all that stuff about how do you make the plow better? I'm too busy thinking about the stars. They weren't the only ones. And Juan Cole did a real devastating takedown of Ben Shapiro. He writes, everything Shapiro says is wrong. This is the professor of Middle Eastern Studies from University of Michigan, who incidentally was offered, I believe, tenure track at Yale until hardcore right-wing Zionists prevented him from taking that position. Juan Cole goes on to say, Judeo-Christian as a term was invented by 19th century missionaries intent on converting Jews and only came into common parlance in the mid-20th century, in part in reaction to the rise of fascism and communism. Many Jews have found the phrase objectionable. In any case, nothing called Judeo-Christian underpinned Western science. But beyond that, he said, even the Aristotelians were relatively cerebral and more based on observation than experiment. Observation would be more like, hey, is this going to work better for the plow? Moreover, Western Europe lost contact with Greek learning from roughly 410 until the 1200s. During those centuries, Aristotle, Plato, Galen, Ptolemy, among others, were cultivated in, are you ready for this? The Muslim world. Yes.
No.
With the Abbasid rulers, 750 to 1258, commissioning translations and funding further study.
That the Abbasid Caliphate, actually.
Whoa. Moreover, the Muslims made substantial advances of their own work within the Greek paradigm. As for Christianity, and this, I think most people, if they spent like 5 minutes, would think about this, it was often inhospitable to science.
What?
And even to general literacy in the print revolution. Astronomer Tycho Brahe was exiled from Denmark on charges of heresy. The Inquisition summoned Galileo, you'll recall, Didn't he end up dying in like a jail or something like that?
Something like that.
1616 to warn him against teaching that the earth goes around the sun. That seems to be very non-Christian of them. But then again, it turns out to be super Christian of them.
There's also Giordano Bruno, who I think was maybe put on a stake. I'm not sure.
As for Jews, Jewish authorities in Amsterdam somehow managed to excommunicate and completely shun Spinoza, placing him under a ban. Why? Because he said that God is the God of nature.
Their minds were blown by too many high-level ideas.
In other words, Ben Shapiro is just shoveling out BS as history and expecting everyone to slurp it up and lick their lips. Although he built on Greek discoveries and used Sanskrit number system, Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, 780 to 850 CE of Baghdad, is generally now credited with inventing algebra, which I suppose you could argue, this is my commentary, was just to figure out how many oxen it would take.
How do you get the plow to plow better?
Yeah. Well, wait a second. I've got this big field here, and how many ox would take? What is the X in this? He also invented the algorithm, which is an Arabic word. Well, but again, that was a very practical application. I'll remind you, if you feel plowing the fields.
Ben Shapiro's got some problems with algorithms lately.
Yes, Hassan ibn al-Haytham, known as Al-Zen was alive in the 11th century, is among the first scientists explicitly to have laid out the scientific method of hypothesis and experimentation that Shapiro praises. More than likely, he found it from a Jew or a Christian and just adopted it by his own. He also first explained optics as light bouncing off an object and hitting the eye, which is also very important as you're plowing the fields.
When you're plowing a field.
You're plowing the fields.
You need to know how light goes through translucent bodies when you're plowing a field.
There'll be times where you are plowing the field and someone will come over and say, how do you know that oxen is there? And you must say that it's because the light bounces off the oxen and goes through my eye, and I call that optics, but the most important part I'm talking about is the plow.
Just technology.
Just technology. The sophisticated astronomical observatory in Khan, Iran during the 1200s at the Mariga made breakthroughs in understanding planetary motion, which of course is extremely important when you are plowing the fields. If you are not aware that the moon will rise and the sun will rise, then you cannot plow the fields because it'll be too dark when you go out to do it. Honey, I'm heading out to the fields. I have no way of predicting whether it'll be sunlight out or moonlight. And then, of course, he goes on to say, like, and this is to say nothing of thousands of years of sophisticated Chinese science. China in the era of the Song Dynasty, 960 to 1279, essentially saw the invention of modernity, with high levels of urbanization, industry, wood block printing, progress in engineering, science, and mathematics, along with paper money, gunpowder weapons, and the invention of the compass. Those are all technological.
China, India, whatever.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. Like
non-Muslim Chinese. I mean, not that that has anything to do with my assessment. It's just, how is it that, I got to say, like, how desperate are these guys for their business model that they're all having to go and like sort of, all roads lead back to the Judeo-Christian values that are preeminent. I want to find a nice way to say this.
Well, he's trying to do this weird Orientalism on the entire Arab world and say, oh, you only invented science because of material factors, when the West, which, by the way, modern concepts of the West are fairly recent and have not always existed. It's kind of a made-up fantasy thing. The West did it for philosophical, for ideological reasons. Like, it's this utter resistance to historical materialism or like material explanations for why people do things. Like it couldn't possibly be a material explanation for why people in the quote unquote West believed the things that they believed. Like, he wants things to be driven completely by ideology and by stories, by myths, which is like pretty anti-scientific if you ask me.
It's also biology. Biology is also what makes these people just question things in a more sophisticated manner.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's ironic in that, like, the main reason that Western, quote-unquote, feudalisms would support something like astronomy is is mainly for things like going across seas so you can take over land from other nations and things like that.
Like there's always a material basis for the things that happen in history.
Right.
Well, that's different. Let me make an analogy. I'm saying that, let's just say for the sake of ease, non-white people who don't believe in Christianity or Judaism, they look at the field and they're just interested in plowing the field. And I think it is to the credit of the white people who are like, we need more fields. So how are we going to get that? And we will it's that first jump.
Well,
we need more.
The argument against practical science too is interesting, coming from the right, where normally they say like, why don't you do something that can lead to like making money on the market or something
right,
like that.
Right, of course. Well, he took a break from that.
Like the Muslim should be like, why don't you guys get a real job? Stop.
Right, exactly. Unbelievable. Speaking of unbelievable, we mentioned this Missouri bill that was passed a week or two ago in Missouri that bans most abortions at 8 weeks of pregnancy, except in medical emergencies. It was signed by Governor Mike Parson on Friday. On the same time, this morning, the Supreme Court basically punted on another abortion question. I don't have it right. I can't remember what state it was from now. Indiana. And they got rid of all of it. They said it was okay to apparently bury fetal tissue if that's what you want to do. But the main law, which largely banned abortion, was rejected at least, or just not. It was a punt, is basically what it is, because they know there's a bunch of other cases that are coming. This one, and I think the idea behind this was we're not going to take this question up right now. But with all that said, Missouri has one clinic in which you can get abortion in the entire state. And it's in St. Louis. And it is a Planned Parenthood clinic. And today, Planned Parenthood released a statement that said Missouri's health department is refusing to renew its annual license to provide abortion in the state. If the license is not renewed by May 31st, Missouri would become the first state without a functioning abortion clinic since 1973. So in many places around the country, there is abortion is out of the reach of many women who live there because of material difficulties. I can't travel the 3 or 4 hours to get there, et cetera, et cetera. In Missouri, we could have the first state that has no abortion clinic. And on May 20th, the Missouri Department of Health and Services notified Planned Parenthood of 3 issues that could impact license renewal. You know they're doing this for ideological reasons, right? Here is a CBS clip that outlines this.
So there's a counter argument in that the people of Missouri elected these lawmakers, right, and they passed these laws. And it's not like you can't have an abortion somewhere else in the country. You could just drive to another state. Who's affected by this?
That's, I think, what's so heartbreaking about this story is that the people who are affected by this are the women who can't take another day off of work. They can't afford to drive 4 hours to the one clinic that's in their state. And they really can't afford to travel 5 hours to go to Illinois. And, you know, one thing we spoke about in that package was there's the 72-hour waiting period. So you have to do that 2 times. And so really who gets impacted by this are low-income minority women who don't have the means not only to have an abortion, but to have a child.
So this that's not even this is the 3 things that Planned Parenthood have been requested. One of them is adjusting who at the clinic provided the state mandated counseling. They added an additional pelvic exam for abortion patients, right? One of the other hoops that people have to jump through.
Yeah, what's the grand total now?
The third request, though, according to Planned Parenthood, is something that they cannot comply with. The health department said it was investigating, quote, deficient practices and needed to interview 7 physicians who provide care at the clinic. Planned Parenthood said it could offer interviews only with 2 who are its employees. The remaining physicians provide services at the facility but are not employed by Planned Parenthood and have not agreed to be interviewed. So Planned Parenthood has no control over that. The clinic will remain open, but will stop providing abortions as of 3 days from now. And so this is what it's like. This is what it's going to be like. And of course, like the commentator said there on that clip, women without means to go to different states are forced to be pregnant and give birth to a child. And that's the new normal. That is the new normal in this country, and it's going to get worse. People got to start to be conscious of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty bad for a while, like we've been talking about. You know, abortion rights are suffering a death by 1,000 cuts. So maybe, my hope is anyway, at least with these laws being so extreme and getting so much attention, maybe this will be a breaking point where more and more people prioritize the fight for reproductive justice, which, of course, by the way, needs to be part and parcel of the fight for health care in general, right? Because it's not just abortion care that poor people can't afford. It's any kind of health care whatsoever.
It's getting dire. I hope I don't know. I hope it gets the attention that it needs. Here's a clip. Former guest on the program, Mirza Baradaran. I guess she was on like 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
She's been on TMBS more recently.
And here she's on MSNBC talking about the wealth inequality and racial wealth inequality in particular. I mean, if you recall, the biggest source of wealth building is real estate. And on this program, very easy to find interviews with people who outline how the U.S. government systemically, as recently as the 50s, prevented black people from building wealth, intergenerational wealth through real estate. The government actively promoted this. Subsequent to that, you had redlining, you had more, but they weren't necessarily official government policy. Certainly in the context of the 2008 financial crisis, many low-income people were basically defrauded by given loans by banks. And I will remind you, there's a reason why they call them loan officers, because they have a fiduciary duty. They are there to assess whether or not someone can repay a loan. And a lot of people lost their homes. Here she is on MSNBC with Ali Velshi, basically saying, the limits of capitalism in terms of fixing this widening racial inequality in terms of economics.
These programs fail because the benefits of capitalism always accrue to the owners of the capital, not to the people living in enterprise zones or promise zones. Using capitalism to fix the racial wealth gap will work only if there's a means to transfer capital, assets, wealth, or housing. What's the practical application of that? How does that actually apply to policies that we're developing now?
Yeah, so, I mean, what we've done for, 30 or 40 years, when we're talking about these formerly redlined areas, that again, I want to repeat, were created by federal mortgage policy. All that we've done is give tax cuts and incentives. So from the Clinton era through Obama and now Trump's Opportunity Zones program, we're saying, okay, big investors, private equity firms, we will give you a tax cut if you come and invest in this formerly redlined area, what we call an opportunity zone. So what it means is if you're going to be an investor and then you can, make the neighborhood better, revitalize it or whatever, you're going to get the equity, right? So the best case scenario is that the people that live there maybe get jobs and things like that. But when we're talking about the racial wealth gap, we need equity. So you need a neighborhood that's gentrifying for the people who live in that neighborhood to get a cut of that increased equity.
Right, because often that doesn't happen, right? Often they're either renters or there's no way to monetize the benefits of gentrification because it's your house.
There you have it. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam.
Yes.
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. How are you, sir? Did you have a good long weekend?
I'm good. Yeah.
All right.
Sure did.
Good.
How about you?
It's okay.
That's just okay.
Yeah, just okay.
You get stuck with the kids.
Let's not get too in deep here,
okay.
Ronald Reagan. Let's
just say okay. Here we go.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Really put you on the spot.
Yeah, you did.
The Shapiro thing is surprising. Not surprising, but I went to a really conservative university, and I remember taking a pre-history class. And I just remember our textbook was basically this Jared Diamond book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, which talks about how the civilizations that won, quote unquote. It was basically a matter of luck and circumstance, but that a lot of the civilizations that were toppled had, better technology so, he went to Harvard. It seems like he would have learned something, but
right.
I wanted to talk about the Jim Baker Fiesta Pail real quick.
Right. I understand.
First of all, I paid for it. It was $100. No big deal. But
wait a second. You paid for it?
Michael a message.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
This whole thing was my idea.
So.
And
wow.
I sent him a tweet before the show, and I was like, the other day you made it sound like you thought you could just open it and there would be food in there, but make sure you have access to hot water because I'm pretty sure that's not how dehydrated food works, right?
Now let me just point out something. I think you're putting emphasis on the word dehydrated because that means to lack water, to have water taken out of it. Okay.
Now, I also want to turn to the description of the product of the Jim Baker website, which says that the bucket has all the fixins to prepare over 100 delicious Mexican food favorites. But you need to mix and match the ingredients using your unique culinary spin, and your options are endless, which I think is true. Yeah. And, basically what we had was a show where Michael was putting dehydrated cheese in his mouth, and then of course it's going to be disgusting. That's not how you eat dehydrated food.
It's not how you eat any food, frankly. I mean, you make a meal. You don't just shove it in your mouth, and it's different components.
So I'm really disappointed, but I guess it worked out for him because he made a bunch of money hyping it, and so.
Were you?
Whatever.
Let me ask you this, because I'm more curious as to if you felt that something was overpromised. I guess that's my question to you. Now I know this isn't fair. Michael's not here to defend himself, but I mean that's what happens when you take your own sets of vacations.
Of course.
But
of course it was oversold,
really,
and underdelivered. And I also want to say, this is a bucket with over 100 delicious Mexican food favorites,
right?
And we're acting like
they store well.
It's just over now. It doesn't seem exactly. So it doesn't seem like it seems like Michael's ready to move on and act like, oh, this needed water and we didn't have it. I guess, on to the next 1,000 patrons. And the opportunity to redo it is sitting right there, so.
Well, to be fair, they did
know.
eventually prepare it using the water from the electric kettle that they knew was sitting over there on the counter.
I don't use that kettle.
Yeah, it's like, honestly, if I was to turn my head to the bucket as to where it is, I first have to pass the sink with the hot water kettle.
Well, no, we'd considered using the coffee maker, but I didn't want I didn't want to ruin.
It's not a coffee maker. It's right next to the coffee maker.
No, I didn't know that existed though. I didn't know.
We have had tea. I have seen you.
You've not
enjoying
seen me have tea.
a cup of tea made with that electric kettle.
Definitely haven't heard that.
Look at this is Matt. Look at Matt now.
I haven't touched tea.
I don't know if you guys just forgot about it, but
it's weird.
I feel like Michael could have thanked me a little bit more for, rescuing the show and the entire premise of this Fiesta Pale fiasco.
Well, it was starting to look like Michael didn't even want to eat it, even though he had promised that he would. I mean, that's the part that I find really upsetting. But
well,
we don't want that impression to get.
If he was against it, he could have told me that before I sent $100 to a terrible, terrible human being.
Whoa,
Jim Baker.
Okay.
and his wife.
Right.
I had to send them the money.
Well,
anyways,
do you want the rest of the food back?
I'm kind of.
Like it seems like a waste. My producer Andy was asking over the weekend. He's sort of known as a dumpster diving freegan. He was like, "Oh, is this up for grabs?" And I was like, "Better check with Raygun first."
Could be. I have a feeling it is up for grabs.
If you want some videotape,
but Michael or Sam, sorry, I do have an idea for you for some sort of, pledge drive or whatever. Set a goal, either a dollar amount or whatever, and then I think you need to have a Suns Out, Guns Out summer week where you wear either tank tops or just a sweater vest.
Suns out, guns out. I see what you're saying. Yes.
Suns out. The weather is getting really great. I bought some short shorts yesterday down at the mall. I think
imagine.
the people would throw a few dollars your way to see you. At least you can wear something professional in the regular half if you want. But then we want to see Tank Top Sam Seder in the fun half for at least a couple of shows. And maybe with the money you could build like an actual studio for the other people.
What do you mean,
there.
An actual studio?
So,
what do you mean by actual
when
studio?
the camera's not only pointing at you, Sam.
Oh yeah, that the backdrop, the second half. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I know. I've gotten some complaints about that. I've gotten some complaints about that. Right. We could probably put in a better camera system. Yeah. No, there's a lot of things we could do there.
Guns out, guns out.
Suns out, guns out. I will take that under advisement. A week's worth of guns out during the fun half. If we do some type of drive. Now, let me just say this. If I do it, it's not going to be like, I tried it on Monday, but I got chilly, so I decided to just wear my a regular shirt the whole rest of the week. Like, I'm not going to be like, it's, show my guns as much as I want. It's going to be, I obligate myself to doing it because that's the way I promise it. That's the way I roll on this show. So.
Well, I would hope so.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
All right. Well, Ronald Reagan, thank you for the idea. We will. I will throw it up the chain here and see what see who bites.
Michael picked a hell of a week to go on silent meditation retreat.
Yeah, no kidding. Can't even defend himself. Attorney Andrew, the Pod Save guys went on Colbert last week to give their opinion on why Beto hasn't taken off. John Favre's opinion was that people don't know how to pronounce Beto, so he doesn't have a lot of name recognition. So yeah. Correction.
Yeah, that must be it.
Correction on the abortion ruling today. The Supreme Court upheld a law that requires the burial or cremation of fetal remains following an abortion. Kagan and Breyer joined the majority in holding up this aspect of the law. I wonder if that was those two. There's been a lot of speculation that they, at different times, particularly under the ACA, did some horse trading. I've talked to people who say, no, there's no horse trading on there. And then other people say, yes, there's totally horse trading. So that may be that.
How do you horse trade if you just read the law and try to determine what the law means?
Jay Tingle. Please open the spigot on the Maggie Haberman public relations piece on behalf of Hope Hicks. One of those articles Maggie doesn't tweet out a link to. I wonder if that must be one of her sources, Hope Hicks, because that would explain it. So there was a story. Where do I have that thing here? That came out on Thursday night, I think the 23rd. Didn't really get much play until later. I feel like on Saturday. But it involved like a very stylish picture of Hope Hicks. I mean, one that, like, you know, you see that picture. If I saw that on Bumble, I'd be like, someone's gone too far. They did some type of shoot. I'm not gonna. That's what's going on with that.
Put that up there.
Yeah, look at that. Like that's a.
I'd swipe left because your lifestyle looks a bit out of my.
Yeah, I would look at that and go, wait a second. No, I've never been in a context where anyone I was around dressed like that. I don't know. It's like a fashion shoot.
Clearly catfishing you if you see that on Bumble.
Oh, totally. And New York Times Politics. Hope Hicks, one of the best known but least visible former members of President Trump's White House staff, is facing an existential question: whether to comply with a congressional subpoena. Now, I may not know what existential means. I'm starting to think. Because this seems to be a lot more practical of a question. I'm going to look up existential here. Concerned with existence, especially human existence. She's questioning her existence as to whether she should comply with a congressional subpoena. She goes on. The aide, the former communications director, Hope Hicks, who left the White House with an enduring mystique that inspired countless news media profiles, is now a private citizen living in California. She went on to become one of his closest advisors while managing to maintain a personal relationship with him, his daughter Ivanka, and Jared Kushner. But she has not completely left her time at the White House behind. She was instructed by the House Judiciary Committee to turn over documents by June 4th and to appear in person June 19th. She was subpoenaed to testify. McGahn received one, declined to appear. He said that he viewed the White House as his client, and that after the White House instructed him not to comply, he had to follow his client's wishes. But Ms. Hicks was an employee, and she's no longer an employee. This is just bizarre. A White House spokesman did not respond to an email seeking comment about whether they will instruct Ms. Hicks to follow Mr. McGahn's lead or what legal grounds they might invoke to do so. But for Ms. Hicks, the options are fraught.
To comply or not to comply?
The likeliest possibility would be a compromise where she would submit to an interview as long as certain topics are off limits. While serving the White House, Ms. Hicks never appeared on camera unless it was at Mr. Trump's side, and never gave an on-camera interview.
So?
Ms. Hicks was mentioned on 28 pages in the Mueller report. She comes across in her interviews with the FBI as trying to alert Mr. Trump to the possible news media reaction he might face to any new information about what took place in the campaign. This is just unbelievable. Like, can you imagine this being written about like anybody else who was being investigated? Mr. Trump, Ms. Hicks told investigators, seemed upset because too many people knew about the emails that she was going to be sharing with Congress. What? I don't know what the... This is just unbelievable. This is clearly Maggie Haberman's a former source, maybe an ongoing source. And this is what you write about your source. That way, they're still your source. I can't remember who coined the phrase beet sweetener, but that is the sweetiness of a beet I've seen in a long time, folks. That's a great picture. Very stylish.
Yeah, it is flattering. I like AOC's response to it, where she said, "What gets me is news breaks that this woman is weighing committing a crime before Congress, and it's getting framed by the NYT as some lifetime drama called Hope's Choice. This is a former administration official considering participating in a cover-up led by the president. Treat her equally."
Good for her. Kentucky Fried Comrade. The phrase that will disturb Sam the most. Welcome to the pod, Sean McElwee. Who are your guys? Said by Mark Maron. I don't mind Sean going on Mark Maron. I've been on a couple of times. That's fine with me. I'm over that. Show's gone downhill. Ever since the president went on. Whatever. Spencer, I designed a house for clients who are at the retreat with Michael. I hope he didn't talk to Scott and Joan. All right. Well, we'll see. Michael's impression of Sam. Hey, for a good analysis of the EU elections, check the Happy Hour with Kristen Kev on YouTube. Jamie's FetLife profile. I don't know what that means.
FetLife is a fetish dating site.
Oh, okay. Hi, you should watch Jesse Lee Peterson's interview with DC Young Fly. It's a masterpiece. Oh yeah, we saw that.
It is so good.
It's pretty funny.
It's amazing.
Michael's those Sun Media. I can't. Oh, Michael's thoughts on his media retreat. That's his meditation retreat. Is there a way I can bring up Lula right now, but like silently? Fenton hates Brenda. Wait, Brenda Bepp. Wait, you're taking IMs now instead of the show like you after the show? How's the work wife? I don't get it. Sam's really hot. Okay, whoever that is, you got to stop doing that. Congressional baseball fan. Here's a story of how our health insurance system is broken. I work for a government employee and signed up for the so-called premium dental plan with Delta Dental because I knew I'd need work done after being without coverage since getting laid off in 2013. I'm going to the dentist today and over the next weeks to address a serious gum issue. And my portion of the bill with insurance is just over $1,000. That's insane. For any comrades that can help, I'm posting a GoFundMe on my Twitter. Thank you. Play ball. Sorry to hear that. Ruben David. Can you talk about Dave Rubin suggesting a solution to internet censorship is the government cloning popular websites and having cloned sites operate as a public good? You know, this solution, just in general, I think is highly problematic. The fact that it would come from these people is even more bizarre. The government... You know, like, and I've thought about this. The nationalization of a Google or Facebook, I think there can be a public option. I think that's fine. But the fact is, you've got to break these companies up. There is a definitive problem. And I think there is an argument that on some level, if you deplatform someone on Facebook or on Twitter, these things have become so ubiquitous and so essential. Or on Amazon, for instance, too. They have become so primary in terms of our communication that you got to break it up. You got to break them up.
How would that even work, though? Like, I know you can make them relinquish some of the companies they've bought, but with Facebook, like, well, you're going to break up the timeline from like the photo galleries or whatever? It seems impossible.
There's a bunch of different services that throw in stuff and the data. You basically you weaken the companies. That's basically what it comes down to. You weaken them so that they are more, you do not allow them to integrate horizontally and vertically in the way that they're doing. And the reason why they're so powerful and ubiquitous is because you can sign in to all these different other things with your Facebook login. Because I can access my security camera with my Google account, with my, all of these different sort of like integrations strengthen the companies and make it impossible for other people to break through. God bless you. People have plans to break this up. And, it's doable. And then if it fails, then you look at other options. But you can't, if you have the government in charge of Facebook, you're just going to have a constant shit show.
Oh, yeah, I don't trust this government to be in charge of Facebook.
I wouldn't trust any government to. I wouldn't trust any government to, not one that has a First Amendment. No. Winnipeg Craig, any thoughts on Richard Spencer calling Jimmy Dore the most honest man on the left? Now, I know a lot of people think that I just made that up. I did not make that up. Let's put up the tweet. Listen, just because Richard Spencer says he's a fan or he respects you because you're honest, does not necessarily reflect on Jimmy Dore. In fact, I would imagine Jimmy Dore does not want Richard Spencer to give him plaudits because now I don't know how Richard Spencer came to sort of like watch a lot of Jimmy Dore stuff. I imagine this is going to hurt Jimmy Dore's monetization because my theory is you get demonetized not based on the content, although that's part of it, but the where people are coming from to visit your site. Play that video. I'm curious as to what the video is. Proof that the U.S. is provoking Iran into war. I mean, this is, I think.
There's a lot of people in Congress that are upset that the Bush administration and the intelligence, they weren't briefing Congress. But watch what John King says about this.
Well, he means Trump.
But if you listen to some of the other members, the Senate Intelligence Committee, for example, was briefed last week, according to a member of the committee, on some of this intelligence. Members who have security clearances can pick up the phone and call and ask for information.
So members of Congress who have security clearance, or there's lots of, they can just pick up the phone and call them and say, tell me what you know. They could get to do that, and one of them did.
Among those, Senator Angus King of Maine, who's he caucuses with the Democrats, but he's an independent. He's a more measured voice normally on issues like this. He says, yes, there's alarming intelligence, but then he adds this.
I don't think there's faulty intel here necessarily. I think the intel may be accurate, but the unanswered question again is, are they reacting to our assertions of action in the Middle East, or are we reacting to them? I think.
So he's not sure.
Okay. So pause it. So this is just a skepticism of the way that this is being concocted. And Iran has contingency plans. They always do. We have contingency plans when one starts to start their machinations and whatnot. So I don't know why Richard Spencer thinks that Jimmy Dore is the only person who's talking about these things in terms of Iran. I'm glad Richard Spencer doesn't think that I'm the most honest man on the left. I don't care what Richard Spencer does.
You would presumably respond, though. If you
I would definitely respond. I would say, hey, Richard Spencer, go F yourself. How's that for an honest opinion? You're a piece of garbage. How about that?
You know, I called him a terrible person to his face once. It was pretty satisfying.
I bet. Now, did Jimmy not respond to this?
Doesn't appear so.
Got to take the views when you can get them.
To be fair, Richard didn't tag him in that, so.
Oh, that's true. He may not even be aware of it.
Choose your
Majority
enemies wisely.
Fapper, regarding impeachment, do you think part of the establishment is scared by any impeachment proceedings will surely show how broken our system is? The establishment seems scared of a revolution. No, I don't think it's that sophisticated. I think their fear is just that it's going to hurt them electorally. All right, folks, I know a lot of people have been holding for a long time. I'm sorry. We're not going to get to nearly any of you. Just going to take top caller, 718 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Rube Davin again from Maryland.
Rube Davin from Maryland. All right, got to be quick.
So you already covered my question, but
all right. Well, let me take another call then. I'm sorry. Mission accomplished.
Do that.
All right, bye. All right. Okay, one more who did not hang up. 484. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Mom.
Yes. Did you call me Mom?
Hi. No, I said, am I on?
Yeah.
No, this is Andrew. I'm calling from Pennsylvania.
Okay, Andrew from Pennsylvania. What's on your mind?
I wanted to talk a bit about specifically the, I guess the issues we've been talking about a lot about Megxit or Theresa May's exit, Trexit from the Conservative Party. I wanted to address specifically the, I guess, issues that this is going to have for other countries, specifically Ireland. My family's from around that area, and I know there's been a lot of concerns that if someone like a Boris Johnson, for example, who's a lot hard line on Brexit, comes in and is going to make sort of more authoritarian, not authoritarian, but further right for sure, alliances with a party like the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party up there, that you're going to see more escalations of violence in the north, or sort of not, maybe a return to like 70s or 60s tier, but still sort of violence in a way that you definitely wouldn't want to. For example, a journalist was actually shot last April in the head by the IRA back there in escalation of this Brexit. Do you think there's any chance of this sort of affecting flare-ups in this sort of thing, in this sort of way?
I mean, I wasn't aware of that, that someone had been shot. I mean, I think there's a, and I'm not going to pretend to have any deep knowledge about this, but I think there's going to be a whole bunch of cross currents if there's finally a Brexit and it's done in such an abrupt, I think, in sort of like, I mean, abrupt is not the right word. Obviously, they've been dilly-dallying for a couple of years, but done in such an acute manner. Let's put it that way. This is going to get ugly. I mean, I think it's going to get ugly, and I don't think there's a way to avoid it getting ugly. It's just a question of like what where the ugliness is going to come from and how ugly. But it's going to get ugly, and I think frankly, my sense is. If there is sort of a hardcore version of Brexit, it's going to get ugly, and then it's going to get uglier. My sense is, if they somehow avoid it,
talk a lot about
that it's going to be ugly, but then it's going to get sort of better.
Yeah, because people talk a lot about the financial things, but the political violence, from the sense I get talking to people, has really been gearing up there. I mean, the shooting last April was, I get the sense that a lot of people are worried that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this thing, and that it's, unfortunately only going to escalate in a very violent way if, Brexit goes through in the way that it's going right now.
Yep. I think you might be right about that. Well, but we're going to have to see.
Yeah.
All right, Andrew, I appreciate the call.
Yeah, thank you for taking the call.
Thanks. All right, folks, that's it for calls today. Sorry, people have hung on for a long time. Our new system makes it impossible for me to tell exactly how long you've been on, but I can tell it's been a long time. I'm going to read a couple IMs, then get out of here. Rob from Austin ticks. In regard to impeachment, I worry that not impeaching would depress Democratic vote, and we need every vote we can to keep the House and not lose much of the Senate. Indeed, silken stuff. Should we be concerned that the right is now dragging MLK because of some revelations found in some supposed FBI tapes? Is there a definitive go-to article debunking the story you know of? Short of 100%, I don't know even what that story is. Have you heard about any new tapes?
Is it presumably the tapes that they allegedly got of him having an affair or something over a phone?
I thought that was a long time
ago. I feel like the scandal, even if that was true, and I don't know if it is true, but even if it was, it would be that the FBI was making tapes about MLK.
That's okay. One night, lemonade stand YouTube historian, your fellow Steven Crowder debunker, 3 Arrows, was in chat asking how to get on the show. Unfortunately, it looks like they're reticent to, as they put it, push themselves on the show. How about extending the invitation to 3 Arrows? I'm not.
I'll look into them.
Yeah.
Oh, they're pretty cool. Sean likes them. He watches their videos sometimes.
Yeah. Well, they could always call in too. I mean, I don't know. I'm not familiar with their work, but man about town. I have a question, comment on previous caller's question to the second to last call. Okay. Ryan in L.A. Shapiro mentions India because Muslim haters claim everything that the Islamic world discovered actually came from India. That's not to say India did not make many great and important discoveries, but that isn't why Shapiro and his ilk bring it up. Yeah,
I discovered the swastika there too.
All right, 2 more. Courier 11. Hey Sam, did Ronald Reagan just make a dog whistle suggesting you build a new studio for David Pakman? And Dr. Chaos MD is the final item. If the open seat on the Supreme Court was what turned out evangelicals to vote Trump, will the GOP pressure Thomas to retire or announce retirement before the election to drive turnout again? Also, seeing how conservatives are impervious to shame or hypocrisy, is there anything to prevent SCOTUS from announcing retirement to drive the vote? But if their party doesn't win the presidency, then rescind their plan to retire? I mean,
none of what you say seems out of the realm of possibility. I speculate that they don't want to leave that seat open, that if Thomas retires, they will replace him with someone just much younger. Because then, frankly, the idea that Ginsburg and Breyer are going to last deep into the next term is very, very hard to believe. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth